Lauren, good morning. It's great to see you.
Good to see you, Gopal and Tiffany, whom I'll introduce more in a moment. Welcome to the COP Drop, a daily live stream during COP28, hosted by the Face for Biodiversity Coalition and the United Religions Initiative. Each day, we are discussing the latest developments from Dubai with a focus on nature and biodiversity, and we continue to learn about the amazing ways that faith and spiritual communities all around the world are working to protect and restore our environment. My name is Lauren Van Ham, and I serve as the Climate Action Coordinator for the United Religions Initiative. And I'm joined by my co-host, Gopal Patel, who is the co-convener of the Faiths for Biodiversity Coalition. Gopal, so good to see you. And today we have with us Tiffany Tu from Tzu Chi Foundation. Tiffany is a project specialist, and she works very particularly in global partnerships and youth development. Tiffany, thanks so much for being with us on the COP Drop.
Thank you for having me.
We know that in some circles, COP28 this year has been dubbed the food COP. We are talking a lot in Dubai about food systems and how they are connected to climate change, climate crisis, and also biodiversity issues. I know that today you were moderating a side event. I wonder if you could just talk a bit about food and climate and food and faith.
Great, thank you for having me. So today I moderated a session on the ethical development pathways to climate resilient food systems. And I think one of the things that really hits home is a lot of times we talk about food, we talk about climate, but it all leads back to kind of that transformation we need in people and making that change in our lifestyles. Food is very important in all cultures and all faiths as well. We see that, food brings us together. In Buddhist tradition, we share a meal, and we actually, in this tradition, we also, as practitioners, we actually have to ask for food. We ask people to give us food, and that's a way of sharing that food and sharing that spirituality and that compassion. So when we talk about ethical pathways, it's about how do we bring our faith into these conversations, and about what kind of food systems do we really want to see? What are the ethical values that drive us? Because a lot of times when we talk about food, people are like, oh, it's about the money, it's about profitability, it's about production. But actually, it's all about compassion as well. It's all about we leaving enough food for the future? So I think that is a very important discussion to have. And today we had a really good panel, and we came back again and again to, these values are the values that drive us. But what it is that we need to put these values into action. We can't say, oh, we need compassion for people, we need to help people, but we don't have compassion to animals. We can't say we love our neighbors, we love our friends, but we don't love the farmers or the people that are growing our food. So I think this is a very important discussion that we need to have.
If we back out for just a second for some of us who maybe haven't thought very much about the significance of food systems and climate or biodiversity, really, could you just elaborate on that or give some examples?
Yeah, so food is, very important. We see that I heard today actually the amount of forests that have been cut down for planting crops to feed animals. It's something along the lines of, in Brazil, 90% of the forests that are cut down is because of livestock feed. And we also hear food is 33%, so a third of the carbon emissions. So food is definitely a very important part of this the system, and also a big part of climate as well. So how do we make sure that food is on the table in the discussions, and at the same time, how are we making sure that the food on our tables are going towards a better climate future that we hope for?
Yeah, that's right. I I want to pass the mic to you, Gopal, in case you have some nuances or thoughts you want to weave in here.
Yeah, I think for me, well, one thing I do when people ask me, well, what can they do when it comes to climate change or biodiversity loss? And I say, well, you make a decision hopefully 3 times a day about what you put on your plate. And that is an environmental decision you're making in terms of the food you eat. Where is it coming from? What are the carbon miles attached to that? Was there any deforestation involved if you're eating, animal products and so on? And so I think food is something which is so near and dear to all of us. But it's also something where we can have an immediate impact. I just did a shop this morning at Whole Foods, and I try to be mindful and conscious of what am I buying, what is the environmental impact on my purchases. So it's so near in the center, but because it's so close to us, we oftentimes forget about it or we overlook it. And today is Food Day at COP. And Tiffany, we were talking before we went live about the call to action that was issued. I'm trying to get a sense of it. I think it was issued on the 1st of December, but they're really publicizing it today, which is the 10th. And I think over 200 organizations have endorsed the call to action. Would you be able to, we're not expecting you to know it off by heart, but would you be able to share a little bit about what that call to action is and the significance of it?
The call to action talks about kind of how we want to transform food systems for people, nature, and climate. So it seems like a very big call to action, but if we look deep down into it, it talks about kind of the food system from all perspective, not just from kind of the people that are consuming the food, but also from the farmers, from the agriculture side of things. And also to improve kind of availability, the accessibility, the affordability, to support kind of that healthy diet. Because as you know, this year is also the first time we've had a health day. So that call to action kind of covers what food means in the context of climate and how can everybody work towards this better food system.
And help us understand a little bit, how does a call to action like that, how does it actually tangibly help the work, for example, that the Buddhist Tzu Chi Foundation is doing?
So it's I think a lot of times everybody wants to be part of something bigger. So if we are able to be part of this bigger kind of call to action, we feel like we have friends, we're not working alone in the space. And I think that is also one thing in this COP that I see is having this coalition of food buddies, as we say it, like, people that are interested in the same thing as you, that are able to work alongside of you. And tangibly is, if we have this call for action, we can actually bring it back to our communities and say, hey, everyone's doing it. We are part of this bigger picture and we need to do this because, we don't want to be left behind as well. Like nobody wants to be kind of the person that is not, being part of this. And I think that's also very important. Like we all want to say, oh, we want to create the future, but what is the future that we want to create? This is a good way to say, hey, there's something there. We can create the same future and head towards that same goal.
That just makes so much sense. I love the idea that we're finding buddies and that we're finding some ways that we align our values. And I'm also just thinking about all of the metaphors around biodiversity, and it's everything from sort of a healthy meal on our plate is going to be diverse, right? We're going to have bits of vegetable, we're going to have bits of protein, that sort of thing. And the same thing could be true in the way that a farmer approaches a plot of land, and a fisher folk, approach the way that they're tending the water and what they're what they're fishing and what they're not. And there's a lot of complexity here, but there's also so much wisdom when we make sure that lots of voices are represented. Really, really, really important. Are you hearing anything more about kind of agroecology or some of the ways that faith groups don't need to be experts in this space, but faith groups can participate in diversifying farming and food as we have known it?
I think one of the things faith groups can do and kind of that voice is also with the indigenous populations as well. I think indigenous people, because a lot of people have been working on their lands for many, many years, many hundreds of years maybe. And of course, we see that the climate is changing the landscape, but at the same time, they already know, a lot of the grandpas and grandmas in our communities already know, May is the best time to plant this vegetable, June is the best time to kind of sow the seeds on this vegetable. And it's hearing that traditional planting methods that can actually help us diversify, because a lot of big corporations or people come into this area and say, oh, no, that's all plant maize because you're going to get the best value. Maize is, profits of maize is going up. So you're going to get the best value. But when something happens, especially now, there's so many disasters and there's so many climate change issues that if you don't diversify, the crops might not make it in this season, and then you're left with nothing. So I think it's that in our communities, being able to identify the traditional values that we already have and to be able to use these traditional planting methods to diversify and to make sure that we are looking after the environment while we're doing this agriculture as well.
And how do you navigate a space like COP, a huge multilateral space, almost 200 countries, many more NGOs and other entities all trying to push their agenda and get what they want through? How do you navigate, especially around food? We know that the Buddhist Tzu Chi Foundation, amongst many other faith groups, has a strong stance on plant-based diets. But we know that there are other faith groups that can't fully go in on that agenda, and definitely other entities can't go fully on in that agenda. So how do you navigate advocating for what your position is, recognizing that, not everyone's going to buy into it, but you don't want to budge on your principles? How do you navigate those kinds of conversations?
That's a very good question, and very hard as well. I think in Buddhism it's about moderation. I think, like, we talk a lot about moderation, and it's okay that not everybody is on the same page about everything. I think that's the one thing, is like we can show friendship without kind of saying, oh no, you're wrong, I'm right. There's things that people agree on. When we talk about compassion, like, yes, we show compassion to animals and we are practicing that, but we also understand that we need to show compassion to other beings, other humans. So if you tell somebody that, oh no, you're wrong, that is not showing compassion to them, because it is maybe their fundamental kind of values that they're holding dear. It's about understanding and about, a lot of times, like, finding a good ground, a good middle ground. Yes, they might not follow a plant-based diet, but we can see that, health reasons, maybe it's good to eat less meat. And that's a good start. We don't have to push everybody to do something straight away. It's making those tiny steps. And I remember kind of in the first COP that I went to, which was 2-3 years ago in Glasgow, and there was a big push on, say, the food at COP being more plant-based and moving towards that goal. And like this year, we can see that 3/4 of the food is plant-based. So, these steps are just as important as saying, those big goals that we have. These small steps are what leads us to the big goals.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, I usually go to the COPs. I've been going since Paris, and this year I decided not to go. And last year in Sharm el-Sheikh, there was very little food options, not to speak of plant-based food options. So I'm a little bit jealous that it sounds like there's so much good vegan and plant-based food there in Dubai. So I hope you're making good use of all of that.
Yes, we can share some photos.
Thank you.
Nice. Well, let's be sure before we're out of time today, Tiffany, that we hear about another one of the aspects of your work that is important and dear to you. I met you through my friend Sarah, who is also doing a lot of work with young people and the next generation. I think the two of you have spent some time together with UNEP's Faith for Earth Youth Coalition. Talk to us a little bit about how you see the next generation being invaluable in this conversation, and maybe a bit about Tzu Chi's youth work.
Yeah, I definitely think youth is very important in this conversation. And so roughly 2 years ago, Tzu Chi started kind of global and international youth leadership program, like kind of bring a lot of youth and their voices to these platforms, may it be COP or other UN meetings or global meetings. And one of the things that makes them so invaluable is because of the way they are able to see things is a lot different than what we can see things. Like I remember our youth turning up 3 days ago, and they were so excited about meeting everyone, greeting everyone, learning so much more. And I think one of the things with youth is like their enthusiasm for everything is so strong, and it kind of allows us also to say, oh, actually, yes, there's a lot more that we can do. Oh, yes, this is something that we haven't thought about. So youth is very important to this, and this is their future. You know, this is what they need to live with, and for a lot longer than we are. So we need to bring their voices to the platform, and also provide support that when they are in this conferences, they are comfortable with the negotiations. They're comfortable going to different places and making sure that their voices are heard.
Do you imagine that there will be some things coming out of this time in Dubai that will kind of suggest more innovation for young people in that food buddy space?
I think so. I mean, this year I saw there's a lot of conversation with small farmers. And what I see is a lot of small farmers are young people, are youth. You know, they're coming back into, like a few years ago, a lot of these small farmers are usually elderly. You know, we had that talk about how agriculture is kind of an aging population. But now we see a lot of young people getting into this industry and making the difference and listening to those wisdom of these older farmers, and to make different innovations to fit the climate that they're in now. So I definitely think in this space, youth space as well, the food space, the youth space, they're one and together.
I think what you're saying is really important. I know in my work at the United Religions Initiative, we see young people in some parts of the world really, really looking for where their job will be, right? If they've been living in villages or rather remote areas, they are not interested in moving to the city. That isn't their first choice, but there needs to be something that is sustaining and stable in the spaces where they are. And so this return, if you will, to a more traditional understanding of caring for land and water and soil it's really giving me hope to hear that there are young farmers on the scene. That's just fantastic.
And it's really exciting. Yeah.
And as we now go into the last couple of days of COP, Tiffany, I'm sure you're looking forward to getting back. I think you're based in Poland, so getting back to Poland, I'm sure it's been a busy couple of weeks. But anything that you're tracking over the last couple of days before you head back home?
Yeah, so I think definitely on the FAO kind of roadmap is something that I'm looking at the moment. And of course, just on the last 2 days, having our youth be able to attend a lot of the kind of negotiations. And I think that would be kind of my focus for the rest of the COP.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Tiffany. I am sending you and your team of young people just a really good wishes for the time that you have left there in Dubai.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany.
Food day at COP.
Food day at COP. What's for breakfast today, Lauren?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do have some organic fair trade coffee that I've been sipping here, but we'll have to get to the more substantive part after we hang up.
Yeah. Well, as Tiffany said, we're coming into the final stretch. And I always find it interesting from maybe from like a spiritual perspective, how the most crucial part of COP is often the last couple of days.
Mm.
And that's when everyone is the most tired, exhausted. People have been away from their families and their loved ones and their regular routines for 2 weeks, staying in hotels. So it's almost people are in the worst possible state of mind, energetically, spiritually, emotionally, to make the most important decisions that they're going to have to over
Such
that
a good
2 week
point.
period. It's really ironic. But I really hope, and I'm sure you have as well been tracking the news today, that now the presidency of COP28 is saying, okay, let's come into the room. Don't bring any of your red lines. Don't bring any pre-prepared statements or positions. Come in and be prepared to compromise so we can all get a strong agreement by Tuesday morning. So it's going to be a fascinating 48 hours there in Dubai.
You know, in light of what you've said, how about those of us who are not in Dubai and feel connected and caring toward all of it? Let's send our best energy to all of the folks who are there trying to find the middle path, as Tiffany wisely said. You're right that what they're doing is not easy, and there's a lot riding on it. So we send our best.
Yes, and we will be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time for the COP drop to start digging into how those final negotiations are going. We'll see you then.
Take care.